Good afternoon. Today is the 7th of July. There's interesting things happening in politics at the moment, but we're not here to talk about that. We're actually here to talk about why I've had so many Rovers. I've actually had 8. This is a very vague, probably not very interesting, and certainly rambling vlog. First Rover I had was actually relatively late on. It's much later on than much before, which would be about 2009, 2004. Rover 45 1.4 Club SE in Pageant Blue. So the reason why I think I like them is nothing to do with having owned any at the time, or actually my family having owned any at the time particularly. The only one I think that was owned in my family was my maternal grandfather, who had a 213, I think it was, automatic in the 1980s. I can't even remember the car particularly well, probably because I was very, very young at the time. This is, you know, talking about something that happened when I was about 5 years old. So yes, although I was into cars at the time, I can't remember. It came more really as something that happened to me later in life, and I wanted something that combined the virtues of a classic car, but something that was relatively contemporary and also quite cheap. 2009 Rovers certainly were very, very cheap. Actually, many post-1990 Rovers still are quite cheap. I mean, the number of ones I've covered on No Budget Reviews since 2019 will probably show you that. I had the 45 1.4 Club SE, it's a facelifted one, from 2009 to 2012. The value of it actually dropped considerably from 2,400, which is what I paid for it. Yes, I think original owner lost something like £15,000 on that car in 5 years, which is absolutely insane. It dropped from that to about £350 by 2012. The car had only done, I think it was something like 85,000 miles. I forget now, but they just weren't worth anything. It was 8 years old, and head gasket was going to go for the second time. One of the reasons why I don't recommend a multi-layer steel gasket. I recommend an original spec one, like a Victor Rines or a Lotus Elise type one, such as Mr. Coleman, the rubbish mechanic, will tell you. And just loads of problems. The exhaust was blowing, and there was a chip on one of the alloy wheels, and it had the rust treatment done, which I've had done to this car, so that was one thing. But yeah, it started to rust at about 5 or 6 years old. Just what they did. I actually did have another car before then. It was only very temporary. It was a 1998 Rover 214 SI, an R3 model, and that was just a sort of stopgap thing. But they drive quite well. They haven't got the best driving position, and the clutches are quite heavy in them. I do have a review of an R3, a 214 on the channel, on No Budget Reviews, with that engine and gearbox combination, and that drove a bit better because the one I had I think more mileage on it actually. They're not as nice as these 45s though. The 25's a little bit better. I have had one of those. We'll get to that in a bit. So that was from 2009 until 2012. Those first two, both with the 1.4K series engine developing 103 horsepower. It's not inevitable that you have had gasket with every Rover, of course, and the one that I had first, the R3, didn't have any at all. That was absolutely fine. Not that I had it for particularly long. Again, I can't remember how much I sold. I think I bought it for just under 1,000 and sold it for 700 or something. I don't know. I'm not particularly good at selling cars for more than I paid for them, but sometimes it happened. Then the next one was in 2015. I'd inherited a bit of money, and I sorted myself out by actually getting a replacement for the first Chevy Cruze that I had. It was a petrol Chevy Cruze. I had another one after that, with an engine that I can't talk about. Again, bought late 2015, but I wanted a Rover R8. I think I'd read so much about it on the AIR Online website, and the prices were very low at the time. In fact, you can still pick up an R8 in rough condition for under £1,000 very easily, if you want. This particular one was a very, very late 5-door R8 200. It was one of the last ones registered October 1996, so well into R3 production. 216 SLI Auto in Nightfire Red, single tone, not a dual tone, single tone, so very late car. And that had a number of problems. It was very low mileage, 45,000 miles, but the car had already been actually written off, and I didn't realise because I didn't do a history check properly. But please be assured, this is the days before I operated at all. In my current job, I didn't do this sort of thing for a living at the time. I would always recommend that at least you go on Auto Trader, if you use Auto Trader, and filter out the written off cars. If you don't want to buy a written off car, some people, they make their business in having written off cars, but you know, it's not my sort of thing really. I don't recommend most of the time the clients do that. Yes, it was low mileage. We did 13,000 miles in it in a year. We had 3 different drivers, and that's what we did, or 4 actually. And I really liked it. It was really good for driving around London, just way before the actual emission zone, anything like that. Very easy to park, quite a small car by today's standards. Reasonably comfortable on the longer journeys, although this 45 is more comfortable than R8 in my opinion. The thing that killed it off in the end was just the number of things that it needed doing to it. I think I paid $650 for it, and it had cam cover gasket leaks, very common with Honda D series engine. It just had loads of things that needed doing to it, and it wasn't economical to continue with it, so I traded it in for the MG3 that we had from 2016 till 2020. That was the second ever car on the channel actually. But my Rover adventure definitely wasn't over, and selling that car in late 2016, it was only less than 18 months later I got another one. 1996 HHR 416 SLI automatic saloon. That car had parking sensors which didn't work. The car was a factory demo. I think it was when the 400 saloons came out in the spring of 1996. It was a green car. Bought it in a snowstorm in March 2018 with some barely legal tyres on it from a family who'd had it from new, local to where I was living at the time, but it was sort of near Esher, and I lived in Epsom at the time. I drove it back in a snowstorm, which was interesting. I actually then took it straight to get some tyres put on the front, which considerably improved the grip. Don't drive around in snow with dodgy tyres, viewers, that's not a good idea. Took it to take it up to Santa Pod for a little bit of fun actually, and I think I got my money back on it. Yes, I did. I got a little bit more than what I paid for. I needed an MOT and 2 tyres, and I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, the brakes needed sorting out. They weren't adjusted properly, so that was not the best. It's not the only time I've had to sort brakes out in a car of this design, because this is effectively an updated version of the HHR 400 saloon, this modified. Yeah, I was going to sell it to a lady who really liked it. She had a 45 and had a problem with the gearbox, I think, and she wanted one of these. I didn't ask lots of money for it, and she came with her parents and picked it up. She was very happy. The next car I had was a 25. I've only had one 25 in sort of gold colour. It was a 2003 25 1.4 IL. I actually bought it in this area of the country. It's down in Eastleigh. That's before we moved down here sort of permanently, actually, my lady wife and I, but I was down here a lot because I have been making weekly trips down here since 2010 actually, just to do with my mother and her business and things. So yes, it was again for Santa Pod, so that was fun. Little Revy K series, terribly high biting point on the clutch. That was a real pain, and it actually gave me kind of sort of pain in my upper thigh, because those 25s have got cable clutches in them. This was the Ford IBE5 gearbox in it. It was an early kind of sort of mechanically updated car, so it had the ultra limited zone compliant engine, the white dials, the notorious Petron key fob, and of course that Ford gearbox, a silver cable clutch, which despite too high. You can get them adjusted, which I should have done really. I just find the driving position in those and the R3s is not very comfortable. This is a much more comfortable car, in my opinion, although some people are fine with that. So yeah, I took it to Santa Pod. It was great, went all the way back, no problems, didn't get anything fixed on it. Even used it for a couple of jobs in the very early days of sourcing cars from people, and sold it for the same I paid for it. It was £400. Next, Santa Pod again, 2019 Rover 620 GSI, again from 1998. That car was very tatty. I paid $320 for it, again locally to here. I think I bought it from Portsmouth. I got back exactly what I paid for it. I had done some work on it, principally again the cam cover gasket leaking, common on D series and F series Honda engines. Not sort of critical to the car, but it's just nice that we don't leak oil. One of the tyres was absolutely terrible, so I had that changed. Can't remember what else I did to it. The air conditioning wasn't working or anything. Driver's window was broken, which is really common on the Rover 600 actually. I quite liked it. It's a little bit too big for me. You know, they're a little bit difficult to park the 600s, I find. Very few of them had parking sensors. The one that Mr. Coleman used to own, which was I think 2020 to 2021 he had it, that didn't have parking sensors either, and you know, he actually damaged it once. You think how could Mr. Coleman possibly not be able to park? But we all make mistakes, even Mr. Coleman very occasionally, and he had an issue parking us. Yeah, once Santa Pod was over, there are videos on YouTube if you want to see what happened with that. Again, an auto, not very economical though, I think like 25 miles per gallon or something stupid. Yeah, I'd have another 600 if I had parking sensors and cruise control, but you'd have to have a 63 GSI to have that, and those are even thirstier on the fuel. So it brings us up to the next Rover. Yes, I have had a lot of them, viewers, an awful lot of them. 1991 216 SLI automatic, another R8, a very early one, as they go. It was owned actually as the company car of Mr. Miller from Classics World. It's owned by Kelsey Media, and that was a great car. It was bought again for Santa Pod, but Santa Pod of course got cancelled due to coronavirus. So I kept the car for a few months after that, and it was really good. Mr. Miller's trying to find that car at the moment, I think. Not Nightfire red, a kind of a sort of flat red dual tone. It's actually on no budget reviews. You can see both the 620 GSI and the 1991 216 actually on the channel on 3 Jacket reviews and no budget reviews respectively. You can see both of those if you want to see more about them. But during the pandemic we had, I think, 4 cars in the household, only 3 of us. We only really needed probably one of those cars to get around in, and so I sold it along with the Astra Twin Top that we had at the time. Astra Twin Top didn't turn out particularly well. Mr. Coleman said I never should have bought it, but it was good in terms of the experience. Actually, that car's had a reasonable number of views on the videos we've made on it. So there we go. And then this, and you all know about this 45 V6. You've seen many videos on it, I'm sure. And I think that's all I have to say. Why do I keep buying these cars? I don't know, I kind of like them. They're not perfect, they have a lot of problems, but they also have a lot of virtues. So there we are, viewers, another self-indulgent, very vague vlog. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video and leave a comment below. If you are a Seat Toledo or Rover 45 V6 tier channel member, you get to see these videos on the day or thereabouts that they're put out. The rest of you have to wait several weeks for that, but maybe for some of you that's not really a problem. Anyway, thanks again.